This is a brief taste of the immense pain I had to suffer through while watching the god-awful Netflix adaptation of Cowboy Bebop.
Sounds to me like blackmail.
You're damn right it is, because, Jet, you are black and you are male.
This is just a sampling of a much larger video that is currently being worked on and will hopefully be done eventually. This video simply covers the comparison of the intro to both the Cowboy Bebop movie as well as the Netflix show. Bebop Flix consists of 10 episodes, with 8 of them being loosely based on episodes from the original, as well as bits and pieces pillaged from the movie. And by loosely based, I mean the writing process seems to have been someone taking cliff notes of the episodes, passing it through Google Translate about 20 times, and passing the result off to the writing staff, who apparently had absolutely zero familiarity with the original in any way. It's actually kind of absurd just how god-awful the writing is for these episodes across the board. Not only do they fail in every regard as an adaptation, but they fail to stand on their own merits. But we'll get to that a bit later. Just for the sake of completion, the episodes pillaged from the original are Asteroid Blues, Stray Dog Strut, Gateway Shuffle, Ballad of Fallen Angels, Black Dog Serenade, Perot LaFaux, Cowboy Funk, and Brain Scratch, with some key moments pilfered from Honky Tonk Women, Speak Like a Child, and, as mentioned, the movie. In fact, speaking of the movie, Episode 1 of Bebop Flix, Cowboy Gospel, starts off by outright poaching the intro from the movie. This opening scene actually accomplishes its job perfectly, as it's a really nice little microcosm of the show as a whole, by which I mean it takes recognizable characters, locations, plots, and other aspects from the original, puts them in a blender, and tries to pass off the resulting sludge as anything other than the putrid garbage that they've turned it into. Take the antagonist from both scenes as a really nice comparison. Both scenes take place during a hostage situation, to which the authorities have not arrived yet, but our heroes are on the scene, after a bounty. In the movie, the robber is waxing philosophical to a store clerk about how he thinks society is very much samey, with nothing special about it standing out.
You know what the world is like? It's like a boiling pot with a soggy stew inside. Nothing in it stands out. It's all the same. One big, pulpy, sloshy puddle of goop.
She makes a comment pointing out where the stew is in the store, and he fires off his gun in annoyance, to which Jet makes a comment about this guy being a wannabe preacher with a gun, showing off both his annoyance with the situation, but also his experience. It's as though he's done this exact type of job dozens of times before, and it's more of a chore than anything else. The robber reveals that he used to work for the company that created the security system the store uses, and was easily able to bypass it as a result. While a bit of a clunky line of dialogue, and a bit idiotic of him to reveal he used to work for that company, it does explain why his group might have targeted this store in particular. Ultimately, the robber seems to have some kind of grievance, possibly even a legitimate one, with society as a whole. While he's clearly a bit unhinged, violent, and quick to anger, it very much feels like a scenario that isn't totally outside of the realm of possibility. And now for the woodchipper version. A madman is holding a small casino room hostage, and he's rambling about how the corporations own everything and screw people over, because he was fired for stabbing a pit boss in the eye.
I worked in a casino once, until they fired me for stabbing a pit boss in the eye.
He maimed a co-worker and was fired, therefore corporation bad. Did a fucking intern write this shit? While both men are rambling about their personal issues to a hostage during a holdup, the movie thug seems to have a logic to his actions, whereas the shitflix thug comes across as nothing more than a crazy guy ranting incoherently about how big corporations suck. Additionally, even the method of stealing has been botched. In the movie, the thug demands money to be transferred to a cash card. He demands it to be maxed out. Now, while the mechanics of the cash card aren't fully established, it seems to be implied that the card itself contains the Wulongs, and even though the card can be tracked, as we see later on in the movie, there's no reason why they couldn't immediately transfer the money out to other cash cards, or just exchange it for physical cash so it couldn't be traced further. In Shitflix, it's literally just a fucking video game loading screen as money is transferred from the casino's bank account to one of their own accounts, which has a 0% chance of not being tracked. Surely the bank would realize literally billions of woolongs are being transferred out of this massive casino to some Randy's account. While the crook in the movie is clearly dangerous, we can understand how he might have reached this point in his life, whereas the madman in Bebop flicks comes across as absurd and cartoonish. I don't know how they managed to make a live-action show appear as more cartoonish than the literal Japanese cartoon, but they managed it. This is across the board, by the way. The anime is fairly consistent in being based on a level of realism to its world, where they try to give their characters believable motivations, goals, and abilities, while the Shitflix adaptation is near constantly acting like it's a joke, or not taking itself seriously, and where nearly every villain is absurd and ridiculous in the worst ways possible. This is almost perfectly exemplified by how both Spike and Feckless handle the situation. In the movie, Spike enters the store while listening to a Walkman with his eyes closed, as if he's jamming to the music, in order to pretend to have not seen the robbers. The leader of the group, falling for the trick, closes the distance, which allows Spike to use a party popper from one of the store's shelves that shoots several projectiles at once to disorient and distract the robber and get the upper hand on him. Once again, Bebop Flicks copies this poorly. The madman and his crew realize the elevator is coming down to their floor, and they prepare to confront whoever comes out. Feckless is also listening to music, but pretends not to see the bad guys when there's like a 0% chance for him to have not seen them. Coming out of an elevator limits both your field of view and the directions you can walk quite a bit, and the goons were directly in front of the elevator and prepared for him. The crook in the original wasn't prepared for Spike entering the store. The robbers in the remake know someone is coming and are prepared. In fact, they even make a point of showing him facing directly towards them while they're aiming their guns at him. In the anime, the thug was kind of off to the side and Spike was very lackadaisical, acting as though he's someone who's not paying attention to his surroundings. Unlike Spike in the anime, Feckless has his eyes open the entire time. He's looking around and acts surprised to be confronted. It's like they included the prop without realizing what it was for. Spike entered the store as if it's one he's been to 1,000 times before, while chilling to music. It's used to buy him time to distract the thug, and it draws the thug closer to him. Listening to music in the show serves no purpose because it doesn't buy him any time, nor does it allow him to close the distance to the thugs, nor does it give him any other advantages. The writers of the show also completely misinterpret the casual line by Spike. It wasn't casual purely for the sake of it. He was still pretending to not know the criminal was there, right up to the last second, and he was being a smartass.
How much is this?
Revealing he was aware the entire time, and he immediately used the party favor as a distraction. Feckless takes off his headphones, looks around, acknowledges the thugs pointed guns at him, and says he was just here to place a bet. He pauses for no reason, then flips the coin into the air and jumps into the air as if it's an impressive kung fu move to f***ing kick the coin at the lead thug. What the actual fuck is this shit? The thugs on either side of him are asleep at the wheel too. They both fail to do anything this entire time, even though they've got guns. They just allow Feckless to close the distance. So first of all, kicking a coin out of the air to hurt someone comes across as cartoonish and absurd. It's hard to take seriously, especially when you've got several people aiming their guns at him, and none of them act. And sure, you can hurt someone with a coin. It's a small piece of metal. Of course that's going to hurt if it's thrown at you. However, it is just a single coin, and this guy makes no attempt to dodge it at all, despite both the fact it's very clear what Feckless is doing, as he's very clearly winding up to kick, but there's also a great distance between them. Worse yet, this guy gets knocked back pretty violently by being hit by a single coin. This would not happen. In the movie, the thug got up close to Spike, and the party favor launches multiple projectiles at pretty much point-blank range. It's not even damaging, but it'd be surprising, distracting, and maybe even disorienting, which is all Spike needed to get the upper hand on this guy. Feckless does a dumb trick, and because everyone in the Netflix universe is retreaded, they all get distracted by this and don't just f***ing shoot him. In the movie, it was a very small group of thugs, 5 of them in total. A door guard who is taken out by Spike before he enters, the leader, the 2 holding hostages at the back, and a final thug in the washroom. Because it was such a small group, it was very much possible for Spike and Jet to take them out and have a good quick action scene to introduce us to the world and characters. The reason Spike was able to take out the leader is because he was fighting him one-on-one and caught him by surprise, up close. In Flex, Feckless is like a goddamn mile away from him, and the thugs just don't shoot their guns because we can't have the protagonist die 30 seconds into the show. What's worse is that this quickly devolves into one of the shittiest action tropes, where they start trying to hit him with their guns. Let me see, I can either blow his head to bits with my shotgun, or I could try to smack him with the butt of it. Gee, f***ing brilliant, guys. Feckless manages to disarm them both, and repeatedly punches one of the thugs in the chest with really weak sound effects, to make it sound like he's just tapping him lightly to no effect, before finally punching him out. Feckless then dives behind the most bulletproof object known to man, a wooden table. Despite the thugs all unloading their guns, the table manages to hold out. It should be impossible for the thugs to lose at this point. Just surround him and shoot him. But thanks to both their stupidity and the magic of editing, we get this really weird shot where Feckless just sort of cartwheels out from behind the table. The thug approaches to find Feckless isn't there for some reason. He then gets his head grabbed and slammed into the table by Feckless. Where the fuck did he come from? How did the thug not see him? The thug is perpendicular to the tables. There should be no way for Feckless to take him by surprise when he is hiding behind them. Well, I actually had to slow this down, and it makes even less goddamn sense. Feckless would literally have to materialize out of thin air for this shot to work. See, in both these shots, the thug is exactly where he's supposed to be, at the side of the table, and there's clearly nowhere else to hide nearby. He then gets his head grabbed and slammed into the table as Feckless does his cartwheel. But in order for this to work, Feckless would have to be standing pretty much exactly where the thug is already looking, near where we originally saw him hide. But it's actually somehow even worse than that. See, Feckless grabs his head from above, and as we could see when we slowed down the clip, he was actually standing on top of the fucking table, meaning he had to clamber out from his hiding spot without making a noise. None of the other thugs saw him or shot at him or called out to alert their teammate, and the thug only noticed Feckless as he was mere seconds from grabbing his head and slamming it into the table. There's no other positioning that works. He couldn't have come from behind the other table, coming at the thug from the side, because not only would the thug have seen him, but this quite literally defies physics, as once Feckless completes the cartwheel, he lands here. And this just doesn't work when we see most of his body going over the table. Also, yeah, he also just teleported from between the 2 tables, because that's exactly where he dove earlier, but when the thug checks, he's gone. Back to the movie. Spike also kind of does a cartwheel, I guess? But that's mostly him avoiding gunfire and taking cover. In fact, the whole fight with the thug is handled better all the way around. With the leader down, that leaves 2 thugs that they know of to take out. Both rush to the front of the store, but Jet kicks in a service hatch and quickly takes one out, while the other is going after Spike. While he could shoot through the display, he has no idea where his target is, and he likely doesn't have a whole lot of ammo. So he's trying to get a glimpse of him by looking over the shelves, reaching over with his gun, so he can shoot as soon as he sees him. Spike again uses this to his advantage, grabbing his arm and pulling him over and into another display, taking him out of action. This didn't require teleportation, or everyone's brains to stop working. It was simple and effective. In Shitflix, Feckless just appears on the table so we could get a shot of the camera rotating as he does a cartwheel over some guy. It's a shame the most interesting camera work in the entire show is wasted not only on a literal nameless goon, but on such a nonsense bullshit shot that makes no sense in the slightest. Spike kicks ass and looks cool doing it. Feckless wins because the script says he has to, I guess. And we're doing dumb flashy bullshit. Because I guess that's cool looking, or something. He then gets control of that thug's shotgun, and takes out 2 more in one shot by dancing the thug around and aiming it over his shoulder. He even pulls the trigger by shoving the thug's hand into it. He's about to shoot at the other thugs when Jet White literally bursts through the ceiling, again copying the original without the substance. In the movie, it was part of the plan that made sense. There's an existing hatch in the ceiling that Jet Black would enter from, but here he... went to the floor above, started digging into the floor, and once he was almost through, just jumped down through it? What if the thugs were standing like 2 feet back from where you entered? You'd end up as a hostage or a corpse pretty f***ing quick. It's a good thing the debris from bursting through the f***ing ceiling knocked the thugs out of action for a few seconds. In the movie, he also landed behind the thug, but the positioning and entry all made sense. A hatch wouldn't be over a shelving unit since it would need to be accessed, so it being above an aisle made sense. The thug was also already distracted by Spike, wasn't expecting anyone else to come in, especially from the ceiling, and he was using the shelving for cover. In Shotflix, the 2 thugs are standing in a random place, with no cover at all, and Jet enters from a completely random spot as he literally had to break through the floor above to get in this way. He also gives a line that Feckless was supposed to wait for a signal. What f***ing signal was he going to give? What should Feckless have done when the thugs were aiming guns at him? Just stall for time for a few minutes until Jet was able to finish mining through the goddamn floor? Then the thugs yet again attempt to melee someone with a ranged fucking weapon. And they yell when running to smack their target with the sights of their guns. The next part of this scene is just more shitty action. Jet temporarily dispatches the first thug with ease, and disarms the other by kicking the gun out of her hand. At some point, Feckless somehow aimed the shotgun at this guy's head, and convinced him to hold it there, because he does nothing to move it, to aim it at literally anything that isn't himself. Feckless kicks the gun and kills him. Then shoots one of the thugs previously hit with the shotgun that was getting back up.
Come on, Spike! We have to take them alive!
Jet is repeatedly fighting the same 2 people, who keep coming at him, one at a time, and make no attempt to get their weapons back to just fucking shoot him. And Jet makes no attempt to shoot them either, despite the fact he has a gun. We also get this really weird fucking moment, where the woman thug is running at Jet, and he reaches his hand out to stop her and accidentally grabs her tit, which she gets upset about, and he lets go as if embarrassed. Is this really the time for a funny haha moment? It just comes off as weird and awkward more than anything else. Oh, and by the way, in case you're wondering, the opening scene for the original has ended by this point. Yeah, the Shotflix adaptation takes twice as long to accomplish far less than the original in a far worse and more embarrassing way. Remember what I said earlier about the original? There's just a few crooks and not an entire gang? Needlessly adding all these extra characters and flashy effects to the scene doesn't make it better, especially when most of it is totally non-functional. After Jet White grabs some titty, we get a guy with a knife yelling while rushing Feckless, and this is actually one of the most embarrassing shots from the entire fucking scene. Feckless grabs his arm and forces him to stab himself. As he's pulling the knife out, Feckless kicks his hand, shoving it right back in, and he starts to walk away. The thug pulls the knife out again, raises it in the air, and yells while approaching very slowly. What the fuck even is this? I guess it's an issue related to bad directing? The thug is likely too close to Feckless, so we can't have him charging at him at a speed that makes sense. So instead he just kinda slowly moves towards him. So Feckless has more than enough time to take him out. Why the hell did this make it into the final cut? Feckless shoots and kills him, and Jet gets mad because they need to take him alive, which actually is a big issue. This seems to be the one thing that has any consistency with the anime, and that's the fact that bounties need to be brought in alive. Dead doesn't cut it. It raises the question as to why Feckless is constantly killing people when he doesn't need to. You can incapacitate them, or injure them enough to not want to get back up. Remember, Feckless has gone out of his way to kill the targets. One of the thugs aims a gun at Jet and he's forced to kill them, to which Feckless quips back about the no-killing thing. But it's not even comparable. Feckless literally killed people he did not have to. Jet's life was in danger, and the thug aiming the gun was in a bad position, where pretty much any shot would likely be a kill shot. The show finally catches up to the anime, and continuing with the tradition it established in the previous 5 minutes. Yes, the past 20 minutes of this video were purely about the first 5 fucking minutes of the show. It continues to miss the point, and butcher the aspects it's poaching from the original. In the movie, after taking out the thugs, Jet and Spike hear a toilet flush, and realize one of the thugs was in the washroom the whole time, and he exits in time to see his buddies being arrested, and he immediately takes a hostage. Jet tries to excuse this mistake as a matter of disinformation for both sides, but Spike ain't having it. This little exchange does a great deal to introduce us to these characters, which is important as this was a movie released a couple years after the show ended, and for many people, this could be their first exposure to the series. Spike initially looks disgusted at the thug holding an old woman hostage, but directs his annoyance towards Jet for getting the information wrong. The thug is getting increasingly agitated as they have their quick back and forth, and Spike directs his anger towards him. The thug demands they both drop their guns. Jet begrudgingly complies, while Spike takes his gun out and aims directly at the crook, who reaffirms his threat that he'll kill the woman. Spike almost heartlessly explains that he's not a cop nor a charity organization, and that this is strictly business, to which the crook responds by calling Spike a cowboy scumbag, and Jet breaks in by saying he knows Spike didn't mean that. But before he could finish, the woman yells "son of a bitch," probably at Spike, and struggles against the thug, but with things breaking down so quickly, the crook aims his gun at the current threat, Spike, who then shoots at him, taking him out. Now let's break this down. While Spike may be annoyed with the bad info, his disgust really is with the crook. Spike is a good guy and wants the optimal outcome here. The thug is already in a bad position. His friends have been taken out, he's alone, and the only thing he's got to work with is a hostage. But Spike disarmed that by claiming to not care about the hostage, that he doesn't care about the woman's safety. All he cares about is the payday for bringing in the gang. Believing that to be true limits the thug's options. Killing her is pointless, and only wastes his own time he could use to try and take out the cowboys. This comes into play perfectly when the woman starts throwing a fit, giving the crook very little time to react. What do I do? Kill the woman who poses no actual threat, or do I take a shot at the man pointing a gun at me? The choice is very clear, and Spike takes his shot, taking out the thug without any innocent victims. This tells us quite a bit about these characters for what is potentially an introduction to the series for many people. Jet gave up his gun right away, knowing the bounties could get away, or worse, get the upper hand on him and Spike. But he didn't want to see anyone get hurt. Well, Spike knew this confrontation had to end here and now, so he pulled his gun and bluffed. Now Jet does know Spike better than that, and was caught off guard by the bluff, not quite grasping its point right away. While Spike really doesn't want anyone innocent to be harmed, pretending not to care was simply the smartest way to take this guy out, given the situation they were in. However, he was still taking a risk. In shit flicks, it's the leader who takes the hostage, and the bathroom crook is kinda pointless, aside from keeping him out of play until they need him for their massive waste of budget money shot. Similar to the movie, Feckless pretends to not care, but does a far worse job at it, pretending the hostage is a joke, saying she's probably led a rich, full life, while Jet is trying to get him to shut up. There's no understanding that this is out of character for Feckless. Jet just wants him to stop talking. There's also this weird shot where the thug kinda dramatically re-aims his gun, for no real reason. I genuinely don't get the point of this. The gun was already pointed at her head. Does pulling it away and pointing it back at her somehow mean it's more pointed at her head than before? Will shooting her now kill her extra harder than it would have before? Similar to the movie, they hear the toilet flush and realize there's one more thug. Chum-Li leaves the washroom, looks around to realize shit went down, and pulls out a shitty-looking sci-fi gun. Rather than just shooting him when they had the chance and realized he was pulling a weapon, they just let him do this. As if this entire scene wasn't already hot garbage in pretty much every way, they somehow managed to make it even worse. See, this shitty sci-fi gun can blow a hole in the side of a space station with ease. We know this because this is literally what happens. Even the leader of the gang acts worried when Chum-Li pulls this out, which only raises the question, why in the fuck would you bring a weapon that could potentially kill your entire team in one shot to your heist? The point of bringing a weapon to a robbery is to intimidate or eliminate any threat to yourself, not to self-nuke at the first sign of trouble. If Chum-Li wasn't in the washroom this entire time, would he have just shot the nearest wall and killed everyone the moment Feckless kicked the coin? I can only assume he didn't have any other weapons on hand, because he doesn't pick any option that won't immediately kill everyone in the room, including himself. And if that's the case, that only makes this whole scenario even more dumb. Rather than bringing a conventional weapon, like the entire rest of your team, you bring a weapon that will only be useful for suicide when you're in a space station. Like, sure, not every shot is necessarily going to breach the hole, but come the fuck on. One shot in a bad direction and everyone is fucked. This makes zero sense. Worse though, this completely nullifies Feckless's attempt at tricking the thug into thinking he doesn't care about the hostage. It's no longer an idea to outsmart the enemy into targeting you, instead of an innocent. It's now just Feckless being an asshole for no reason. Yeah, that's right, they copied the whole I don't care about the innocent hostage thing.
Don't you get it? I'm gonna splatter Grandma!
Now I am walking out of here! Oh, she dies.
Well, that's a real shame. But we're not cops and we're not from some charity organization.
Oh, she dies. Wait, that's...
Sorry, lady, but we don't protect or serve. This is strictly business.
That's your hostage?
Spike.
Was she like 80? I mean, she looks like she's led a very full, rich life, haven't you, ma'am?
Without understanding why it was said in the first place, and changed it to be even more assholish and stupid for no reason. Feckless also continues aiming his gun, just as Spike did in the movie, but again, they missed the point. The stakes have been changed when you're facing someone with a hole-breaching weapon that will result in you getting sucked out into space.
Correction, sir. That's blown out.
In the movie, the old woman is absolutely at risk, as is Spike, but in Bebop flicks, it's literally everyone in the room who is at risk of dying to one single shot. The two remaining bounties, all the hostages, most of which are about to completely disappear into thin air. Feckless and Jet White themselves. Best case scenario, he misses everyone and hits a wall that doesn't face the vacuum of space. Worst case scenario, everyone fucking dies. And the only reason they don't is because this show operates on fucking cartoon logic. It makes sense for Spike to aim at the thug in the movie. It makes no sense for Feckless to not back down when facing a man who could kill everyone in the room in a single shot. Continuing to aim here and not taking the shot when it's available doesn't make him a badass risk taker, it makes him a fucking idiot. Further misunderstanding the point of the original, they even copy the whole I'm not a cop bit and the insult towards Spike.
But we're not cops and we're not from some charity organization.
See, that's your mistake. I'm not a cop, and you're not worth that much.
Sorry, lady, but we don't protect or serve. This is strictly business. Guess you'll just have to chalk it up to bad luck.
Cowboy scumbag.
Wait a minute. Piece of shit, cowboy.
But they do it in a way that makes no sense in the fucking slightest. That's right, they split the original statement into two pieces and had Feckless direct them at two different characters when it makes no sense to do it this way. In the movie, Spike not being a cop changes the game for the thug, because a cop would be required to do what he could to save the hostage. Not being a cop and not caring takes away any weight threatening a hostage has, which is part of why the crook calls Spike a scumbag, because if Spike were telling the truth, that means he really is just an asshole who's only in it for the money and doesn't care about any innocent lives lost, and additionally, this means there's no way out for this thug. In Bebop flicks, not being a cop doesn't matter, and in fact is probably a detriment, because the same leverage Spike had over the thug in the movie is now working against them in the show. Spike not being a cop in the movie proved him to be a threat that needed to be taken out. Jet disarmed himself. The hostage is useless. If this guy wants to get away, he needs to deal with Spike, thus directing the thug to target only him. Feckless doesn't need Chum-Li to target him here, because not only is he already the target, but again, breaching the wall to fucking space kills everyone. We don't want this thug to think Feckless is a direct threat to his continued existence. We want him to put the weapon down. Chum-Li isn't the one holding a hostage either. He's just a moron with a gun that could kill everyone in the room, and he doesn't seem to realize the gravity of the situation with his weapon of choice, while even his boss does. Agitating him, threatening him, and telling him you have no reason to care about the hostage he doesn't have makes him more of a danger to everyone. Spike directs the danger towards himself in order to save innocence. Feckless antagonizes a moron and pointlessly endangers everyone in the room. They could not have butchered the scene harder if they fucking tried. Additionally, the cowboy insult is because reasons, I guess? Maybe it's because he won't back down? I really don't know. He just kinda says it because I guess it was said in the original, so it has to be said here too. Remember, the movie thug said it because of a perceived lack of morals. He thinks Spike doesn't care about an innocent life, only the bounty for bringing in the gang. Not caring about collateral damage implies very low morals, but also acts as evidence that there's no way out for the crook. Feckless also got exactly what he was asking for. Chum-Li raises the gun to shoot, and Feckless manages to shoot him, but it's too late. Chum-Li also managed to get a shot off, one that penetrates the hull of the space station. Now I've already referenced this, but we start running on Looney Tunes logic here. The second the hull is breached, everything not nailed down should be immediately blown out into the vacuum of space. Something else happens instead. Our heroes have a chance to slowly give each other an "oh fuck, this isn't good" look, as the hull kinda slowly expands, and we get slow motion shots of coins elegantly floating into the air, blood elegantly floating off corpses, and Jet yells to hold on to something, even though we should be well beyond that even being possible. We get a shot of one of the corpses being blown out into space, and the camera draws back to show off the casino's space station, which just comes across as unnecessary and wasteful, especially as we never revisit this location. This is literally the only time we see this place. I'm super glad they burned the budget on this shot, rather than hiring better writers. Most of the hostages just seem to not exist anymore. There's a few holding on for dear life here and there, but really, they should all be dead by now. If you try to hold your breath in the vacuum of space, you will rupture your lungs. Also, the air is being blown out for far longer than it should be. This entire room should be depressurized in seconds, even though this part of the scene goes on for a couple minutes. They try to make it into a tense situation. The bounty almost gets blown out into space, so Feckless risks his life to save him. Chum-Li can't hold on and nearly pulls the thug leader into space with him. Jet, who shouldn't be able to talk, asks where the emergency switch is. Why do you need to pull an emergency switch to activate the door to seal the breach? Shouldn't that be something that gets detected automatically? This also only activates on the one wall that actually needs it. It's super lucky he didn't breach a different wall it leads into space. The machine Chum-Li was holding onto hits the jackpot, of course, so it's now pelting Feckless with coins, causing him to lose his grip, and he is nearly blown out into space before Jet White hits the switch and everything is just back to normal. The lights even come back on. I just have to say, this shot of Feckless and the thug leader flying towards the hole looks so shitty. Feckless then asks if he can hurt the leader of the gang, to which Jet White encourages. Now again, it's worth mentioning that not being faithful to the original doesn't make it bad. What makes it bad is its own awful writing. We're meant to be endeared to these characters, and they're proving them to be cruel and sadistic, which Spike and Jet never were in the anime. It wasn't even this guy's fault that the hull was breached. In fact, he was clearly not okay with this possibility when faced with it just moments ago. The scene ends with the hostage woman walking up and saying, "Who are you?" To which Feckless responds, Just a humble bounty hunter, ma'am. Once again, copying from the original. Poorly. In the movie, the woman was confused as to the title. She says, "He called you a cowboy. What does that mean? What are you?" This gives a moment for Spike to show off a little and help endear the audience to him. See, Spike just took out 4 of the 5 thugs, one of which just held her hostage, and what he did was pretty impressive. They had control of the situation pretty much the whole time, and he even managed to deal with the unexpected thug, without any innocent people getting hurt, and they captured all 5 thugs alive. In shit flicks, it's a total shit show, start to finish. A massive amount of property damage, innocent civilians needlessly endangered, and quite frankly, everyone in that room should just straight up be dead. This woman was pretty much insulted for no reason, and it ends with Feckless and Jet White just kinda awkwardly standing over the guy they knocked out, doing nothing at all as this woman walks up, looks around and asks who he is, only to steal a line from the original with none of the respect it deserved. All of this, by the way, is less than 10 minutes into the episode. It honestly feels like no actual thought went into any aspect of this scene. It's like they thought a store being robbed was too mundane, so they had to amp it up into a casino. Maxing out a cash card was too mundane, so let's steal billions of oolongs. Spike can't be a smartass who intelligently outplays his opponents. He has to do dumb, flashy bullshit that makes no sense and would only succeed at getting himself killed. Jet doesn't enter through a maintenance hatch in the ceiling. He bursts through the ceiling for some fucking reason. And there's double the thugs than before, and they blow a hole into space. Isn't it exciting? Fucking hell, I hate this shit. So this is why I said the intro was actually perfect, because this does perfectly represent the entire rest of the show very accurately. Nearly every character constantly makes stupid decisions, and is insanely unlikable. Any aspects pillaged from the original are done with no respect for the source material, and are absolutely butchered to the nth fucking degree at every goddamn turn. The show seems to rely on obnoxious, quirky behavior and flashy effects and ideas, even though most times they're devastating to the world building. Character motivations are nonsense, and all this is done through taking the ideas, concepts, and words of better people, shitting all over them, running them through a fucking meat grinder, and trying to pass off what came out the other end as a simple retelling of the original, or trying to fix the mistakes of the original. The absolute fucking audacity.